Hello my quilting friends, my name is Leah Day and welcome to this quilting tutorial for Jagged Crazy Weave. This is a really funky design that's going to be stitched both in this direction as I zigzag across my quilting space and in the opposite direction. So this is how it starts out. You're going to stitch some zigzaggy lines across your quilting space and then occasionally leave gaps, big spaces open in the design. And this is going to open it up, make sure it's not too dense, make sure it's not, quilting a little bit too much on your quilt. And it's also leaving that nice, beautiful texture. So like here, I'm going to leave that gap open because I think it looks really cool. And occasionally you can see that I would leave the gap in the middle, and then also occasionally I would stitch over and leave the gap a little bit on the top and a little bit on the bottom. So if you want to learn how to quilt this design by itself in a little bit more detail, check out my other video on how to quilt jagged lines. That's the name of this design when it's just like this. But when we double it, it becomes Jagged Crazy Weave. So here we go. I'm going to start stitching. I'm going right across with my zigzaggy line. I'm going to pretend like there's a gap to the left of that. So I'm going to kind of zig in and over. And you can probably already tell that this is going to be a little challenging to keep track of where you are and what you're doing, like what you're echoing. So right now I'm going to echo that line. What do I mean by echo? I mean that I'm stitching another line parallel an equal distance away. So I'm aiming for just a little bit less than a 1/4 inch distance spacing. All right, so now I want to make my little gap area. And again, you have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing because we're now at the point we're really overlapping. So I'm going to stitch out, I think I'm going to stitch over, kind of create like a V-shaped gap. So I'm going to stitch over a good bit, about 1 inch or so. And then now I'm going to zigzag in and connect with that line I just stitched. So there we go. Connect with that line. I'm going to travel stitch along it for a short distance, and then I'm going to veer out again with another zigzaggy line, creating two nice open V shapes there and there. But of course, a little bit overlappy, so it's a little confusing. So just remember what you're doing at any given time. Okay, so now I'm going to echo that. I'll probably echo this 2 times. And this is a great design to practice echoing. This is a great design to practice quilting straight lines and sharp angles in free motion, which as you can see is absolutely possible. And it's actually a really good thing to practice because you always end up with straight lines and sharp angles on your quilts. Stitching in the ditch, you can do that with free motion quilting. You can do that with ruler quilting too, but it's honestly a little bit faster and easier if you can master that skill just with regular free motion quilting too. All right, so we've got a gap there and a gap there, and this is looking really nice and crazy and overlappy. So I'm going to do another gap. I'm going to travel stitch down, and then I'm going to veer off, making that gap this time kind of in the middle. There we go. Reconnect and stitch to the side. So this is an edge-to-edge design. So I'm going to depend on the edges of my quilting space for travel stitching. I'm going to depend on that in order to space out the lines of the design. So it's really necessary to have an edge of your quilting space. So this is going to work great in something like borders or sashing where you've got nice edges to build off of and work off of. So that is pretty much it for how this is going to work. As you can see, it's a little crazy and chaotic, but I think it's a really cool texture to learn how to quilt. Learn more about the sewing machine I'm using in this video at leahday.com/sew20.